All right, gang, let's go ahead and get started. It is about that time.
Obviously, you need the last one.
Welcome back to Wilderness Management. Don't worry, you're still in the add drop phase. It all goes sideways today. Happy birthdays. That's appropriate. Let's get into a couple of foundational things. First, an announcement. We're planning on having our first summer camp informational meeting for those of you who are planning on going to East Summer Camp or West Summer Camp if you're extra cool. And I'm excited about it because summer camp is awesome. We do have some survivors of previous summer camp, even in this room. So if you are planning on going on summer camp this coming spring, late spring, definitely talk to your classmates who've been on it. They can give you the inside approach, like how awkward does Dr. Park make it, really, versus how much am I imagining. Anyway, so we'll have that information meeting, and we'll get everybody started thinking on which direction you want to go. The content, the curriculum is exactly the same. It's more a question of which ecosystems that East or West Camp is going to that fit your career goals. Right? So resource, recreation, wildlife, water, urban, doesn't matter your specialization, they're both equally functional at scaling you up. For West Camp, we are talking about going to the northern New Mexico, like the Taos area. It's beautiful.
Shocker. That's a change from last semester.
And we haven't quite finalized that yet.
That's good. No, that's cool. I'm not mad about it. I'm just
Go ahead and do
shocked.
that whenever.
No, I'm
because
just
that sounds
shocked.
perfect.
Because last time you talking about going to the UP, and I was like, oh, okay. So that's really cool.
The UP is alright. I mean, anybody who is identified in the social group of Upers, like, if they really own that, how bad could they be? Alright, cool. Let's, any other announcements? Any other, like, RSOs, student club information? I know Conclave is coming up. Do you guys have practice?
The meeting's tonight in this room at 6 o'clock.
Conclave, meeting, 6 p.m. tonight. Here.
Well, Conclave's 11 to 12, but this is just the meeting for everything.
Alright. Tonight at 6.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other announcements for the good of the cause? Alright, quick recap and summary of our last class session. We talked through the syllabus, super ratchet basic stuff, no big surprises there. We picked a time and a place for our field trip, as well as a potential backup or fallback weekend if the weather is prohibitively bad for our first shot. And get hyped about the Daniel Boone National Forest. Clifty Wilderness, Red River Gorge, world famous rock climbing, awesome trails, big trail races through there, a bunch of historic interpretation from paleo native eras on up through historic, so white settlement starting in the 1700s mostly, mid to late 1700s. And then everything after that, and all of the forest resource and wildlife and rec management issues, and specifically wilderness management issues that you care to shake a stick at. All right. Our next thing is to put on your radar, for those of you who are graduating in May or December, thinking about at least summer jobs for what you might do to either start your career or at least log some experience, either locally, state, or federally. Start the clock counting up your experience and your seniority for whatever side of things you want to get into. Now is the middle, but also starting to get into the late portion of summer state and federal hiring processes. So federal government in particular typically takes up to about 9 months to hire and onboard people and so forth. So this process really started last fall for those of you guys, gals, thinking about this coming summer. But I just wanted to put a couple of job aggregator websites. Obviously, USA Jobs is a huge one for everything federal. They all have to be listed on there. And these are specifically backcountry ranger positions. These are GS7, GS79. So some of these would be a little bit tricky to get into as somebody still working on completing your SIU SAF accredited forestry degree, which counts for 5 years of federal experience. 5. You get 5 years of experience for 4 years of classwork credit. And you might be looking at stuff like GS 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 if you've already started to accumulate any federal experience for backcountry rangering or wilderness rangering more specifically. If that's your jam. So, I'm just going to click through a couple of tabs. If you are interested in any of these, maybe note the website more than a specific job posting. I would love to meet with any of you one-on-one during office hours on Tuesday or Thursday afternoons to get your federal resume in fighting shape. It is different than your regular resume, and a couple of the senior classes have started to kind of build federal resume building and writing into the curricula because it's such a huge thing. Federal hiring has been weird in the past 12 months. Federal careers have been weird in the past 12 months. But the need for federal wildland firefighters and backcountry rangers and so forth has not changed. It has not dropped. In fact, things like climate shifts, climate change, climate forcing, wildland fire management is becoming more of a person power and skilled person power issue more than ever. So check out a couple of things like this. So Indeed.com, which is infamous for having ghost job postings and ghost applicants and stuff like that, so they can charge everybody more. But Park Ranger Coordinator for City of Buckeye, Arizona, a sprawling metropolis in the Sonoran Desert. 75 to 113,000 a year. That's not something you would start with, but it's important to get an idea of what you might be interested in working towards so that you know where to start along that arc, okay? And so on and so forth. Park Ranger Coordinator, Forest Ranger 1, Forester in Coeur d'Alene, Park Ranger 1, Shoshone Backcountry Wilderness Ranger, the Student Conservation Association, and so forth, right? The list goes on and on and on. So we'll talk about some of these different organizations as they relate to and interface with and drive and develop and innovate on wilderness management all throughout the semester, but it's important timing-wise to sort of be on this early. So I'm not going to be upset or offended at all if you guys bring your laptops to class or you pull out your smartphones and you're even scrolling job listings while we're having class, right? It's that important that you guys are on that wavelength. All that I would ask is if you do bring a laptop to class, please don't scroll Instagram or something like that with a bunch of moving images and stuff like that that can be very distracting to your classmates. So please be respectful of everybody's learning needs, and otherwise, by all means, search all that you want. A lot of the biggest sites also have search automation. So if you save a search for backcountry technician, wilderness ranger, search and rescue coordinator, trail crew lead, etc., that can be searching for that every single day around midnight. Between midnight and 6 a.m. you'll get the emails of whatever's new that day or that week. Okay, so please, please, please offload the need to remind yourself to go search for these things. Sometimes it's stressful to go looking for job postings, so let the robots do it. Okay, cool. So ZipRecruiter, USA Jobs we saw. There are a bunch of subreddits, and I know that it's pretty chuggy and not very 6'7" to use like the World Wide Web. But Reddit has an app that you can use without having to use the World Wide Web or email. And there are a whole bunch of really pretty good professional subreddits, including for forestry, for park rangering in general, for wilderness rangering in specific, and so on and so forth. And these are, by and large, people doing the thing that some of you are interested in doing. So it makes sense to surrogate, that is, learn from their wins and their fails before you try to jump in as well. Cool? So, cast a big net. You guys are digital natives. Use that to your advantage. So, Reddit. And here's some very specific, targeted, useful information that is hard to know elsewhere. Things like, if I'm going to be a backcountry ranger, what do I need to know about search and rescue? There's a whole curriculum for that. There are certifications, there's all kinds of training, because it benefits everybody to have highly trained backcountry search and rescue teams and high-angle rescue teams. We'll talk about the difference there in a later class. Enough said about job searching for now? Alright, cool. So, do the thing, check it out. I'm screen recording this as well, so you guys will have this for reference afterwards. Even Facebook. Even Facebook has information. This is a post from Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park. If you like trees, this is the Sigma male of big tree forests. I apologize. That's toxic and inappropriate. All right. Let's see. The USA Conservation Job Board, American Conservation Experience, is a specific not-for-profit organization. They have a wilderness monitoring technician lead. So if you don't enjoy talking to people, as much as most forestry people don't enjoy interacting with people, you can work in and around a wilderness area and not even be really primarily focused on like the trails and the campsites and encountering visitors out along trails, making sure everybody's safe and that they know where they are, they have enough water, not injured, etc. You could be a wilderness monitoring technician or lead and function solely in the backcountry on the physical resource of wilderness, resources, plural, right? All the different ecosystems and so forth. And you could spend months seeing very few people. So if you're a super strong introvert, or if you want to go all Unabomber, either way works. I'm just kidding. But, right, a lot of these jobs are out there, and there's the whole variety or range or spectrum in terms of, I want to be working with people every day. I want to be working at the backcountry or the wilderness permit office and the desk that people will have to come to before they can go backpacking in our wilderness, all the way out to, you get helicoptered out to your duty station, and 3 months later they helicopter you out some more fresh rations. 3 months after that, they helicopter you back home if you're still alive. Alright, so the whole range is available for you. It's a question of positioning yourself to get ready to blast off into the particular side of things that you want to. That said, you don't have to know exactly how you're going to end up at age 67, normal retirement age or whatever, at age 22 or 23. There's a lot of lateral mobility here in terms of job arcs or focus areas or skill sets. It's pretty common for people to get in through fire and then switch over to law enforcement or backcountry patrol or whatever. Okay. Any questions about the job side of things? Okay. So, this is a low-key assignment for anybody who is not interested in working in forestry, and in particular in wilderness management, following the semester. It's a low-key assignment to have your resume. Later on in the semester, at a couple of points, have you guys bring in your resumes as an easy writing assignment, right? Because for other classes, you got to write your resume too. It's already done. Copy paste, I'll never know. For those of you who are high-key interested in working in wilderness and so forth, it's a very, very, very useful thing for you to have a well-curated, ready-to-go, polished, and semester. I'm going to say, hey, next class section, bring in your resume, whatever shape it's in, whether or not it's finished. And we'll see if we can't move that ball forward just a little bit each time. Okay, we'll chunk it down into smaller leaps so you don't have to like sit down and write the whole thing all at once. That's stressful and exhausting. Cool. Moving on from job stuff. Any questions, comments, feedback, clarifications about the job side of things? It's going to be a high cadence sort of repeat, for 30 seconds at the beginning of every class session, hopefully, just as a reminder to help people thread the needle on that. All right, in that case, let's get into the idea of wilderness. So, this is not really a note-taking section yet. We're going to get into some definitions. We definitely want to take some notes. But for now, we're just at the 40,000 foot high level, zoomed out concept level. So, how would any of you guys define wilderness? Just in your own words.
Like an area that hasn't been developed or has not been touched by humans for like, let's say 50 to 70 years at least. I can't really say ever because every it's pretty much been touched by now. But
Okay, so an area that is untouched for some period of time on the years or decades time scale. Okay, we're going to see some of those ideas multiple times this semester. Yeah.
Would it still be considered untouched if it's like minimal? Like if you feel like it's still classified as, would it still be wilderness if
I was
it's
gonna
minimal?
say roads, so yeah, I don't know how many roads.
Because I know like, I don't remember what it was called where they can't do machinery or anything or like cars or anything, but so they do anything about Canada. So it's that,
So, if untouched is really hard to do, couldn't we just like squint a little bit when we define
Yeah.
untouched and be like,
Yeah.
what's like 99% untouched?
yeah, it's just,
Okay. Or presence of absence of roads is a very clear and unambiguous criterion potentially. So, mostly untouched. Another key word that we're going to see along the lines of this untouched concept is the idea of pristine. And it's important that we recognize there are all these sort of different words and so forth that get at different parts of this concept of wilderness, which is a very new concept. It's a very young concept. Very young. About 80 years old. And these words kind of mean different things to different people. So you can have two people talking at each other and not talking with each other at all, even though they're using the same vocab. Okay, so you also mentioned plus or minus roads. But maybe if they're like old roads or like janky looking roads, not like high speed, limited access interstate. Yeah, okay. And you also mentioned stuff about like power tools, was it?
the absence of machinery.
Okay, so machinery. Or mechanization. Okay. What else? We're on a good line here, yeah.
To the untouched point, I think a lot of wilderness areas do have like developed campgrounds to some degree, like whether that means there's toilets in the ground or like, I mean like just literal pits, like pit toilets, not like flushing water and everything, but a lot of backcountry areas do have that.
Okay, so I heard
Campsites.
degree of development specifically bathrooms as a proxy for other stuff like other things you would find in a built and developed campground. Okay. What other kinds of stuff do you normally expect to see in a campground when you pull up, ready to camp?
The actual sites.
Campsites, yeah, okay. What else?
Fire range,
Like bathroom.
Bathrooms,
facilities or something?
fire range, what else?
picnic tables.
Picnic tables, and other forms of parkitecture. You can't have parkitecture without park. Architecture.
45-degree angles.
Wood textured concrete outhouses. Okay. How else would you describe or identify a wilderness?
I think just away from people.
Remote.
Away from that.
It's remote from people is the reference. This is gonna get so awkward when we start like aiming people at wilderness to go have fun there. If part of the defining feature of wilderness is people aren't there. Oh shoot. Okay. What else? Yeah.
Untamed.
Untamed. What does untamed mean? I agree with you. What do you mean?
Maybe like a lack of management.
Yeah, lack of management, lack of like, I was gonna say safety net, so you don't know what you will find.
That is a tie-hot level of spicy take. Okay. Somebody, you saying what, search and rescues?
Lack of safety net.
Safety net, thank you, safety net. So less or no safety net?
Left, yeah, less.
Less safety net. Okay. You guys ever heard of the song New York State of Mind?
Yeah.
It's before your time. It's a real reference, but I'm fascinated by slang, and I apologize for how unbearable that's going to become. Okay. Is there anything about wilderness that might be a state of mind thing more than it is a physical object in a physical place thing?
Maybe a higher sense of isolation and like separation.
Okay. Isolation.
Like a sense of freedom.
Freedom. Now that sounds more like the American wilderness we're here to talk about. You! Alright. Freedom from what?
Industrial.
And or freedom to do what?
Industrial. Freedom from industrial or civilization.
Freedom from civilization.
Law.
Law. Okay, so it's like the forestry version of the movie The Purge.
Yeah.
I mean, who are we to yuck someone else's cannibalism yum, right? Okay. So this, it's a lot. As the youth might say, it's giving confusion. Confused. So, part of our job this semester is going to be to parse a lot of these things out, which means think hard about them and define them very clearly. Look how some folks who have gone before have tried to do much the same thing. and ask ourselves and ask them, at least through their writings and so forth, why? Why go through all of this effort? Do you guys see the paradox cooked into, if you and I expect that a wilderness area needs to be managed less, how do you tell the Forest Service, which is a big bureaucracy, to just, like, mellow out? That's weird. Congress telling its agencies in the executive branch not to do stuff, or not to do stuff in certain ways. If I have a dingo, which is about a dishwasher-sized version of a skid steer, you can attach hydraulics to the front of it and, lay it out, or bucket scoop out trails and stuff like that. I can make miles of trails highly sustainable, highly aesthetic, that would pass the vibe check very inexpensively, very safely, and very quickly or efficiently. So what's the miles of trail per, not dollar, but hundreds of thousands of dollars that we can crank out using a dingo or a skid steer bobcat, or other heavy mechanized equipment, and specialized sort of smaller versions of basically road construction equipment or even industrial forestry equipment. These lack of machinery or lack of available mechanization techniques or equipment is kind of a squishy rule here. So we're going to spend an entire class session talking about the minimum tool rule, what that looks like, and why helicopters are awesome. Okay, cool. So have we pretty well got it? Like, you guys look through this sort of chicken scratch writing here, and it's like, okay, yeah, when I'm thinking of wilderness, I'm basically thinking about these things, even if I wasn't thinking about all these terms all at once. About right? Are we missing anything? Okay, cool. Let's just kind of marinate on that for a sec. And let's see. If you brought your note cards, I have the collection if anybody needs one. Give me a shot.
It got squished.
Would you like a crisp one?
How? You sure? I don't know.
Anybody else? Alright. Cool. First line. First and last name. This is not a quiz, so I mean, you could mess up your name, but otherwise, no wrong answers. Second line. Identify the name of the place, the geonym, as the geographers call it, where you were the most remote from civilization and safety net and nighttime light pollution and highway noise and masses of people and permanent signs of human occupation, habitation, and development. What's the name of the place? Don't have to construct the whole story. Next open line down. Just wild ballpark estimate, order of magnitude estimate. So 10 versus 100 versus 1,000 versus 10,000. Or 0.1. How many miles do you recall that you were from the nearest civilization? Like gateway town. For those of you who've taken Forestry 420, a gateway town is typically the relatively small urban developed area that serves as the gateway for entry point, exit point, people going into wildlands, parks, forests. There's often, I guess this park is at the eastern mouth of Rocky Mountain National Park, El Portal. It's in the name. It's a portal to Yosemite National Park in California. Jackson Hole, or Jackson, Wyoming, or Moose, Wyoming, is a couple of gateway communities for Grand Teton National Park, just south of Yellowstone. How many miles was it from wherever, however deep you got into that wilderness area, to the nearest town or city? Just ballpark guess.
Are we talking as the crow flies, or like how far you'd actually have to like drive?
Fair question. How you would drive? Or walk out if it's a walk-in only place. Next line. Just short phrase level, doesn't even have to be a complete sentence. Description of, publicly appropriate description of, what were you doing there? So you might be answering rock climbing, backpacking, canyoneering, base jumping. It might be a recreation activity, it might not. Something like spiritual retreat or other spiritual practice. Or it might be something else. It could be anything. Next line. Why were you there? Not what were you doing there. Why were you doing that? Okay. And all it's yours. All stuck. The farthest I have ever been from civilization and really any support services or safety net was on one of the toe slopes of Denali, highest point in North America, in what is what used to be called Mount McKinley. It was renamed to its indigenous name recently, and the whole, or almost all of that national park is also wilderness. There's one, I think it's about a 70-mile long road. It's a dirt and gravel road that they have to constantly be blading out and so forth, because even in what we would think of as summer, they can get frost heaves 6 feet high. So imagine a 6-foot speed bump showing up in your dirt road overnight, every single night, even in most of the summer season. Pretty wild stuff. It takes about 6 hours to drive those 70 miles from the park entrance at, I think it's Healy, Alaska. I think it's Healy. Out to a big sort of wilderness lodge out at the other end. And it was awesome. We were walking in the Alaskan tundra, which is like rainforest, jungle, thick canopy at, it's not closed canopy, it's more like woodland, it's all shrubby stuff that's 6 to 8 feet high and just super impenetrable. Among the very hungry grizzly bears who had 3 months of not snow on the ground to pack on enough calories to make it for the other 9 months. And they were big. And we got to do a research project there looking for trails then, so miles wise,